Defended my son after he came out and my wife demanded he leave. Now she's staying at her parents'. The long and short of it is that my son came out to me as gay, and my wife took it extremely badly. I'm stuck, not knowing how to handle either one of them, although for completely different reasons. Here's how it all unfolded. Wednesday, I came home from work like any other day, and my son told me he had something important to share. He was fidgety, clearly nervous, and after rambling for a bit, he eventually told me he was gay. Honestly, I already knew. He's always been a good kid, smart and thoughtful, but I'm a programmer, the default computer guy everyone calls to fix their laptops and desktops. Let's just say there were signs, and, without drawing a picture, I was well aware. So when he finally found the courage to come out, I was almost relieved. We've always had a strong relationship, but the fact that he never told me sooner made me question if maybe he didn't trust me as much as I thought. Of course, I did the dad thing, told him I loved him, that all I want for him is to be safe and happy. He seemed so relieved. Then he asked if I could be there when he told his mother. Now that I think about it, that's probably why he told me first. My wife is a deeply religious woman. She wasn't always. At some point, she turned from somewhat religious to deeply, intensely devout, and honestly, I can't pinpoint exactly when or how it happened. I'm not religious in the slightest, though I'll go to church and do the church events to make her happy. When she got home that evening, I waited for my son to decide when he was ready to tell her. He finally worked up the courage, and as soon as he spoke, everything went to hell. At first, she didn't really believe him. I think she thought it was some kind of joke. But when it hit her that he was serious, she started crying, and then she went into what I can only describe as a rage. He tried to calm her, and I tried to help, urging her not to see this as the end of the world. But she just kept spiraling, saying this wasn't the plan for him, ranting about grandchildren and a million other things. She kept working herself into a frenzy, until finally she stormed off to his room, started dumping out his clothes, and told him to get out of the house. My son just broke down bawling. That's when I completely flipped. I ordered him to go to my bedroom and stay there, and I unleashed everything I'd been holding back on her. I accused her of being a terrible mother, told her I'd be 3 weeks dead and buried before I let her throw him out. She fired back, yelling that I wasn't backing her up, insisting being gay was wrong, repeating a bunch of other nonsense. After a heated fight like I've never experienced before, she packed up and left to stay at her parents'. My son was shattered, blaming himself for everything. I tried to talk to him, but I could see he was devastated, a shell of himself. I told him he could take a few mental health days, let him skip school for a couple of days, but made it clear he'd need to go back on Monday. He asked if he could spend the night at a friend's, which I agreed to. I know his friends can offer a kind of support I simply can't. Since that night, I haven't spoken to my wife at all. I don't even know what I could say, or what I should say to her. And with my son, I have no idea how to stop him from blaming himself. I keep replaying everything in my mind, thinking maybe I should have prepared her in advance, eased her into the reality bit by bit, or maybe stayed calmer myself and handled it less emotionally. I just don't know what to do or where to turn next. I'm lost. Update 1. I didn't sleep much this week. I'd been running on fumes and, not long after everything happened, I finally passed out. When I woke up, my first priority was talking to my son when he got home. He'd made it in earlier today. I could tell he was holding up all right, at least on the surface, but I couldn't get rid of the nagging fear that he might do something rash. That thought alone had my stomach in knots. I know I can't let things slide, so I'm planning to sit down with him again soon and really talk things through. More than that, I'm already looking into finding a family therapist, someone who can help us untangle all of this in a healthy way. I owe him that much, and more. As for my wife, I decided she needed some space and time to process everything, so I've left her be for now. I told myself I'd wait until Monday to reach out, give her room to breathe. If I don't hear from her by then, I'll contact her directly, and whatever she says will guide my next steps. For what it's worth, I don't truly believe it'll come down to divorce or any final, dramatic end. But if it ever becomes a choice, between my son and anything else, there's no question. He comes first. He always will. To give a little more context, we're in Louisiana, near New Orleans. My wife's faith is Southern Baptist. Some of the confusion seemed to be about the timeline. My son went to his friend's house last night, Friday. All the other stuff blew up on Wednesday. Sleepovers aren't unusual for him. He and his buddy bounce between our house and theirs, usually holed up watching movies or playing games on either the PC or the PS4. For age reference, I'm 39, my wife is 37, and my son is 16. I want to say thank you for all the support and advice. I'm reading everything and taking all of it to heart. I can't express enough how much it means to me to know there are people out there who care. Thank you, sincerely. Update 2. I guess I'll start with my son, since all the worries about him hurting himself have been weighing heavily on my mind. I sat him down, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it was the most miserable conversation I've ever had in my life. I told him how much I love him, how I always want him here with me, how he's the most important thing in my world, and how I wouldn't know what to do if he were ever gone. Then, I gave him one of my business cards. Sure, it has my work number, but I also wrote my cell on it in case he ever doesn't have access to his phone. On top of that, I added the number for the Trevor Project, which, bless whoever pointed me that way, and the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. I asked him to please keep the card in his wallet and, if he ever feels like he's going to hurt himself, to call me or one of those other numbers. He took the card, said thanks, and tried his best to reassure me he wasn't thinking about anything like that. That night, we ended up having another heart-to-heart. I was scrolling through Netflix or Hulu in the living room when he came up, sat down next to me, and just lingered there for a bit. He apologized for making me worry and for starting everything that's happened. I stopped him right there, told him he had absolutely nothing to apologize for, that none of this was his fault, that he'd only done what I've always taught him to do, which is be honest with me. And he had been. I made sure he knew I was proud of him. I probably sound like a broken record, but I need him to know, really know, that I mean all of it. I brought up the idea of family counseling, bracing myself for pushback. I half expected him to think I was trying to fix him or something. But nothing, he seemed fine with it. Relief doesn't even cover it. We just ended up watching TV together for the rest of the night, talking about nothing in particular, but it felt good and strangely normal. The rest of the week, I did my damnedest to give him as much normalcy as I could muster. Just kept things like they would have been anyway. After everything, the only real difference was that he'd been hanging out in the living room with me more, instead of holding up in his bedroom. I'm not sure whether that's because he wants to be sure I'm okay, or maybe he wants to reassure me, or maybe, and I laugh at the thought, he just wants the bigger TV. He's not back to 100%, but he's so much more himself than he was a week ago. A few people cautioned me to remind him that our house isn't just my house, it's his too. I took that to heart, told him to invite his friends over to stay the weekend. And they did. I just dropped the whole crew off at the movies, where they'd see something, then grab a bite and call me for a ride. All I want is to help him feel normal again. But then there's my wife, things with her fell apart. Late Monday after our son went to bed, I called her. I was angry, as much as I love her. I'd consciously given her time and space to process things, but it stung that I had to be the one to reach out first. Still, I tried to push aside the resentment because I needed to know where we stood. In my head, I made a list of what needed to happen if there was even a chance to make this work. First, we all had to go to family counseling, with the counselor I chose. Second, she needed to find a way to get over the gay thing, therapy, prayer, whatever it took. And third, she had to find some way to make it up to him, again, however she saw fit. Those were the hills I'd die on, anything else we could negotiate. When we talked, she agreed to counseling but insisted it be through the church. I put my foot down, no way. I wanted a neutral counselor, someone I could trust alone with our son. We spun around on this point until nearly 3 a.m. We picked it up again Tuesday, same story, late into the night, and again Wednesday. By Wednesday night, I told her we needed to have this talk face to face and finally move forward. Thursday, I told my son I'd be home late, left him some money for pizza, told him and his friends they could start their weekend fun a day early if they wanted. After work, I drove over to her parents' house, sat there and tried, again, to hash things out. And again, nothing.
Hey guys, just in case TikTok gets banned in the US next month, make sure you're following the YouTube channel link in bio.
I just couldn't trust the idea of going to a counselor I didn't know. At some point, I cracked. I let go. I just broke. I couldn't keep going in this endless circle. Sleep deprivation probably made it worse. I hadn't slept more than 20 minutes at a time for days on end, but I was done. I'd truly tried, wanted to make it work. We'd been together since college. I do still love her. But I couldn't keep risking my son's well-being, especially now. Someone has to prioritize him, and it has to be me. So I said it was probably for the best to stay apart. I'd bring her the rest of her things over the weekend. Then I left, drove to Walmart, bought some boxes, sat in my car and bawled for half an hour, then finally headed home. I got back at some god-awful hour to find a couple of my son's friends asleep on the couch. Turns out, when I told him to invite his friends to stay over, I meant just for the day. He thought I meant overnight. Normally, I wouldn't want other people's kids in my house during a school night, but that one's on me. I'll have to remind him about that later. Sleep just wasn't coming. I was too exhausted to even close my eyes. So I waited until my kids' usual wake-up time. Got the boys up, made them breakfast, sent them all off to school, emailed my boss that I was taking a sick day, and then finally, mercifully, slept for 10 hours straight. Now here I am, having just dropped my son and his friends off at the movies. One final thing, I've decided I'll never tell my son some of the things she said in our talks. He doesn't need to feel any more pain. I want them to have a chance at some kind of relationship in the future, and there's no reason to poison that possibility. I needed to do something to clear my head, to distract myself from everything swirling around. Maybe I'd play a game or zone out in front of the TV, or just mindlessly scroll until it was time to pick them up. My thoughts kept looping back to everything that had been said, turning over the kind words and stories I'd read before. Again and again, I found myself rereading those messages, holding on to each one. I felt a surge of gratitude for the people who reached out, for the simple fact that good people still exist. Some of the stories hit me hard, truly heartbreaking things people have survived. It made me wish they'd had someone in their corner, someone to help carry the weight. Everybody deserves that. Everyone deserves to have someone fighting for them, someone who cares. Even as just one stranger to another, I want you to know, you are strong. All of you. Update 3. It's been almost 2 weeks since I last posted, and honestly, I wasn't sure I'd be writing another update. Things got complicated. Really complicated. First, the good news, my son is doing better. We started seeing Dr. Martinez, a family therapist I found who specializes in LGBTQ+ youth. She's been incredible with him, and I can see him slowly coming back to himself. The guilt he was carrying is lifting, bit by bit. We've had some really good conversations, and for the first time since this all started, I'm genuinely optimistic about his future. But then there's everything else. Last Sunday, I was at Home Depot picking up some supplies to fix our back fence when I ran into Sarah, my wife's younger sister. I've always gotten along well with Sarah. She's the more liberal one in their family, went to college up north, works as a social worker. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, kept glancing around like she was worried someone might see us talking. Mike, she said, we need to talk. Not here, but soon. I suggested we grab coffee, and she agreed to meet me Tuesday evening at a place across town. I had no idea what to expect, but her tone made my stomach drop. When we met up, Sarah looked like she hadn't slept in days. She ordered her coffee with shaking hands and kept checking her phone. I need to tell you something about Jessica, she started, using my wife's full name instead of Jess like she usually does. And I need you to know that if my parents find out I told you this, they'll probably disown me. My heart started pounding. Sarah, what's going on? She took a deep breath. Jessica hasn't been staying at our parents' house this whole time. She's been staying with Pastor David. Pastor David. Their youth pastor from when we were dating in college. He's married, has 3 kids, and has always given me weird vibes, though I could never put my finger on why. What do you mean staying with him? I asked, though I think I already knew. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Mike, I'm so sorry. They've been having an affair. For months. Maybe longer. When all this happened with your son, she saw it as a sign that she should leave you and be with David instead. The coffee shop started spinning. I felt like I was going to throw up. How do you know this? I managed to ask. Because I caught them. Last week. I went to drop off some clothes Mom had washed for her, and I used my key to get in. They were in the living room. His wife and kids were at her mother's for the week. I sat there in complete silence for what felt like hours. Sarah kept talking, explaining how she'd confronted Jessica, how Jessica had broken down and admitted everything, how she'd been using our son's coming out as an excuse to finally leave our marriage, how she'd been planning this for months. She said the gay thing was the last straw, Sarah whispered. That it proved God was punishing your family, and she needed to get out before it got worse. The rage that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. Not just because of the cheating, though that was devastating enough, but because she'd used our son's sexuality as justification. She'd made him feel like he was destroying our family when she'd been the one destroying it all along. I drove home in a fog. My son was at his friend's house for dinner, which was good because I needed time to process this. I sat in my car in the driveway for probably an hour, just staring at our house and trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with this information. When I finally went inside, I did something I'd never done before. I went through her things, the stuff she'd left behind when she moved out. I found receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, hotel receipts from nights when she'd told me she was helping with church events, text messages on an old phone she'd forgotten in her jewelry box. The worst part? Some of the messages went back almost 2 years. Right around the time she'd become deeply religious. It wasn't a spiritual awakening, it was an affair with a married pastor. I called Sarah back around midnight. I need you to help me, I told her. I need proof. Screenshots, anything you can get. Mike, I don't know if, Sarah, she threw my 16-year-old son out of his own house because he had the courage to be honest about who he is. She made him think he was destroying our family when she was the one having an affair. I need to protect him. I need to make sure she can't hurt him anymore. There was a long pause. Okay. But we have to be careful. If David's wife finds out like this, it could destroy their kids too. Wednesday morning, I called in sick again and drove to a lawyer's office. I'd looked them up online. They specialize in divorce cases involving infidelity. I told them everything, the affair, the way she treated our son, my concerns about custody and her trying to force him into conversion therapy if she got any kind of shared custody. The lawyer, Ms. Chen, was blunt. With proof of adultery and evidence of her rejecting your minor son for his sexual orientation, you'd likely get primary custody. But you need documentation. That evening, Sarah came over after my son went to bed. She brought her laptop and showed me everything she'd managed to screenshot from Jessica's phone when she'd confronted her. Messages with David talking about leaving their spouses. Plans for weekend getaways. And worst of all, messages where she called our son confused and said she was praying for God to fix him. I made copies of everything. Yesterday, I finally told my son. Not everything, he doesn't need to know all the details, but enough. That his mom had been unfaithful to our marriage, and that's why I was filing for divorce. That her reaction to him coming out wasn't really about him at all, but about her own guilt and wanting to find someone to blame. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, Dad, is this my fault? Like, did me being gay somehow cause her to cheat? I grabbed his shoulders and looked him straight in the eye. Son, listen to me very carefully. Your mother's choices are hers alone. You being gay didn't cause anything except giving you the courage to be honest about who you are. That's not a bad thing, that's a brave thing. This morning, I served her with divorce papers. I also sent copies of everything to David's wife, along with a letter explaining that I felt she deserved to know the truth. My phone has been ringing nonstop. Jessica called screaming, her parents called threatening to sue me for alienation of affection, apparently not a thing in Louisiana, and David's wife called crying and thanking me. My son asked if we could order pizza and have a movie night tonight. Just the two of us. I said yes, of course. Tomorrow, I'll deal with whatever chaos comes next. Tonight, I just want to be his dad. I keep thinking about something Dr. Martinez said in our session this week. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's harmful behavior, even when that someone is family. I think I'm finally learning what that means. Update 4. I thought things were finally settling down. I was wrong. It's been 3 weeks since I served Jessica with divorce papers, and what I thought would be a straightforward process has turned into an absolute nightmare. But not for the reasons I expected. The fallout from exposing David's affair hit harder than I anticipated. His wife, Maria, didn't just leave him, she went nuclear. She showed up to their church service 2 Sundays ago with printed copies of every text message and threw them on the altar during the middle of his sermon. The entire congregation saw everything. David was fired the same day, and from what Sarah tells me, half the church families have either left or are demanding answers about how long the leadership knew. But here's where it gets complicated. Jessica isn't backing down. Instead of accepting responsibility, she's doubling down on this twisted narrative that our son somehow caused all of this. She's hired some expensive lawyer, apparently David's been funding it, and they're claiming I'm an unfit parent who's enabling deviant behavior. Last Tuesday, I got served with papers requesting emergency custody based on claims that I'm exposing a minor to an unsafe environment and failing to seek appropriate treatment for a confused child. The language made me sick. They want to force my son into conversion therapy and are arguing that my permissive attitude is harmful to his well-being. I called Ms. Chen immediately, and she was furious. This is a desperate move, she said, but we need to be prepared. Courts sometimes are on the side of caution when children are involved. The worst part? My son overheard me on the phone with the lawyer. When I found him in his room that evening, he was sitting on his bed with his head in his hands. Dad, maybe I should just go stay with her for a while. Until this all blows over. I sat down next to him. Son, what are you talking about? I heard you on the phone. She's trying to get custody because of me, right? Because I'm gay? His voice cracked. Maybe if I just pretend to be different for a while, go to whatever therapy thing she wants, this will all stop and you won't have to fight anymore. My heart shattered. Here was my kid, willing to sacrifice his own well-being to protect me. I pulled him into a hug and told him we'd fight this together, no matter what. But then Thursday happened, and everything got worse. I was at work when my phone rang. It was my son's school counselor, Mrs. Peterson. Mr. Thompson, I need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident. I dropped everything and raced to the school. When I got there, Mrs. Peterson looked grim. Your son was involved in an altercation during lunch. He's not in trouble, but I think you need to hear what happened. She led me to her office where my son was sitting with ice on his knuckles. His friend Tyler was next to him, looking equally shaken. Tell him what you told me, Mrs. Peterson said gently. My son took a shaky breath. Brandon Mitchell, you know, that kid from my history class, he started saying stuff about Mom and Pastor David. About how everyone knows they were together. Then he started laughing and said maybe that's why I'm gay, because I have messed up family genes or something. Tyler jumped in. I told Brandon to shut up, but he kept going. He said his mom heard that your mom wants to send you to one of those camps to fix you, and that maybe she should because you were obviously broken. My son's voice got quieter. I tried to walk away. I really did. But then Brandon grabbed my arm and said, maybe if your dad wasn't such a pushover, your mom wouldn't have had to find a real man. And that's when you hit him? I asked. He nodded. I'm sorry, Dad. I know you taught me not to fight, but I couldn't let him talk about you like that. Mrs. Peterson cleared her throat. Brandon's parents want to press charges for assault. But several students witnessed the entire thing, and they all confirmed that Brandon was the aggressor with his verbal harassment. I've suspended Brandon for 3 days for bullying, and your son gets 1 day for the physical altercation. As we were leaving the school, my son stopped in the hallway. Dad, are people going to keep talking about us? About mom and dot everything? I wished I could lie to him, tell him it would all blow over. But he deserved honesty. Probably for a while, son. Small communities love gossip. But you know what? Let them talk. We know who we are, and that's what matters. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in my kitchen staring at the divorce papers and court documents scattered across the table. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Jessica's moving back in with mom and dad. David left town this morning. Word is he's headed to his brother's place in Texas. So he just ran. Left Jessica to face the mess alone, left his own wife and kids to deal with the aftermath. Part of me felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt exhausted. Then my phone rang. It was Jessica. Mike, we need to talk. Her voice sounded different. Smaller. None of the righteous anger from before. I don't think that's a good idea, Jess. Especially not with the custody hearing coming up. Please. Can we meet somewhere? Just for a few minutes? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a diner outside town the next evening. When I walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past month. Her hair was unwashed, she had dark circles under her eyes, and her hands were shaking as she stirred her coffee. David's gone, she said without looking up. I heard. He said he needed to protect his family and that we'd gotten too reckless. She laughed bitterly. Protect his family. Not our family. His. I didn't say anything. I honestly didn't know what to say. Mike, I messed up. I know I messed up. But I'm scared about the hearing. My lawyer says. He says I might not get any custody at all. Jessica, you threw our son out of his house for being gay. You want to send him to conversion therapy. What did you think would happen? She started crying then. Not the angry tears from before, but broken, defeated tears. I was so angry. At you, at God, at myself. And when he told us, it felt like everything I believed in was falling apart. David said it was a test, that God was asking me to choose between my family and my faith. So you chose David. I chose wrong. She looked up at me for the first time. Mike, I want to drop the custody fight. I want to sign whatever papers give you full custody. I need to know he'll be okay. I studied her face, looking for signs this was some kind of manipulation. But all I saw was a broken woman who'd lost everything. What about the therapy? The conversion stuff? I was wrong about that too. I talked to mom's pastor, not David, obviously, but Pastor Williams from the Methodist Church. He said love is love, and that trying to change who someone is goes against everything Jesus taught. She wiped her eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to make sure our son knows that I love him. Even if I did a terrible job of showing it. We talked for another hour. She agreed to drop all custody claims and to attend family therapy if Dr. Martinez thought it would help. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue full alienation of her parental rights, which would have meant she could never see him again. When I got home, my son was waiting up for me. How did it go? He asked. I sat down next to him on the couch. Your mom wants to try to make things right. She's dropping the custody fight, and she wants to go to therapy to work on your relationship. He was quiet for a long time. Do you think she really means it? Or is this just another one of her plans? I don't know, son. People can change, but they have to want to. We'll take it slow, see what happens. He leaned against my shoulder. Dad? Even if she changes her mind and wants me back, I want to stay here with you. You're not going anywhere, kiddo. This is your home, and it always will be. The custody hearing is next week, but it looks like it'll just be a formality now. My son goes back to school on Monday, and we're both dreading the whispers and stares. But we'll face it together. Dr. Martinez says healing isn't linear. There will be good days and bad days, setbacks and breakthroughs. I'm starting to understand what she means. Some days I feel like we're making real progress, and other days I wonder if our family will ever feel normal again. But tonight, watching my son laugh at some stupid movie we're streaming, I'm reminded that normal is overrated. We're building something new, something honest. And maybe that's better than what we had before.